ومن سار على نهجه واستنى بسنته إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, I think this is the third year that I'm actually doing this talk on marriage. But inshallah, I want to in this talk about some of the practicalities rather than telling you about the beauty and the wonderful blessings you get from marriage, which no doubt you do get. And marriage is really one of the biggest things probably that you will do in your life, one of the biggest decisions you'll probably make. And alhamdulillah, if you do it right, inshallah, it can be a source of happiness, source of peace, comfort, and lot of mercy and blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Marriage really is a very special institution in Islam. I'll come to later on, inshallah. A few weeks ago, actually 2 weeks ago, I was talking about the limits that Islam puts on us in terms of our interaction between the sexes, between men and women. And I kind of listed some of the prohibitions that Islam puts. And perhaps if you were here for that talk, you were thinking that's quite restrictive in terms of what we're allowed to do, in terms of how we're allowed to interact with each other as men and women. And I mentioned the reasons why Islam puts those restrictions on us, on our freedoms, personal freedoms, and that ultimately it is for our own benefit, for the benefit of the societies and the communities that we live in. Nevertheless, that in spite of these restrictions, Islam has shown us a very easy and very simple way for men and women individually to get together, and that is through marriage. So brothers and sisters, as you're sitting here, inshallah, you're probably thinking, some of you, about this. Those of you especially in your last final years or coming to an end of your study, you're thinking, inshallah, looking forward to this. And this is really something that is perhaps a decision that you'll make sooner or later, and something that will change your life, hopefully for the good, but sometimes not so good. There are restrictions on us in terms of what we can do with the opposite sex. You can't sit together, freely mix, and this is something we talked about before, and mentioned the reasons why, the harms, the dangers of free mixing. And sadly, brothers and sisters, it's really something that is becoming too common, I think, and I'm sure all of you know this, or you see it. And one of the reasons why it's so common, I think, it's because the alternative or the solution has become difficult for people to try and implement. This only solution is marriage. And marriage today has really become so hard and so difficult for people, so they look for these other ways. And many people, if you ask them why do you do this, why are you freely mixing, why are you involved in a relationship outside of marriage, a lot of the time they tell you it's because I can't get married. It's because it's so difficult to get married, so we do this. But marriage in Islam, it's very simple, very straightforward, and so easy really. It takes not much effort and doesn't cost you much either. But society around us has put a lot of obstacles in our way and has made it very difficult. So what is the consequences of that? A lot of relationship outside of marriage, and I think this is really, really common. I suppose if you look around university or any college or any place, you see lots of Muslims. It's something that you can't avoid. And how do we address this today? How do we go about addressing this problem of relationship? The only way of addressing it, in my view, is to provide a solution. And the only solution is marriage. There's no other way. I don't know, maybe you may have another idea, but I don't know of another way of fixing this problem other than through marriage. Because let's face a few basic facts. All of us as men and women, we have very basic instincts, right? And one of those basic instincts is the sexual instinct, the sexual desire, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put into men and women. And it's something that we don't deny, or we don't try to reject either as well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us simply to control it. And through marriage alone is the only way that you can implement or you can carry out the sexual desire. And if we recognize this, then we need to recognize that the only way that people are able to kind of find a way out or find a release for this is in marriage. And if they don't find the doors of marriage open, then what do? They resort to this relationship outside of marriage. And I think as a community in the future we're really going to face difficult issues unless we address these issues right now. I mean, we can take lessons from wider society in terms of where the society around us is going. Marriage to them today is like, an outdated concept. It doesn't really matter anymore. I think, in fact, the number of people living outside of marriage is probably higher than those who are inside of marriage, if you look into the figures or the statistics. So where are Muslims heading in the future in this regard? If we don't sort ourselves out now, I think we're going to have a big problem in the future. And this is something that, one of the speakers said, a well-known speaker. He was giving a talk on the future of Muslims in the West. And he said there's no future until you deal with the situation of the youth and the relationship. I don't know if you agree with this with me, brothers and sisters. I'm talking something, I don't know, something that a problem that I'm seeing. Is this a problem or not a problem? There is a problem. And I think in my limited experience of looking at society and looking at kind of trends in society, I think where we're heading really is not something good. The number of relationships that are outside of marriage, and you can see them, you can see it right in front of you, increasing day by day, where the sense of guilt and the sense of shame is no longer there. I mean, things perhaps a few years ago that you didn't witness, you openly witness it now. I mentioned this an example 2 weeks ago when I was talking about this. You see women with scarves on their heads openly, in the arms of brothers, or I don't know if they're brothers, or in the arms of men. And this is something really you would not seen a few years ago, or even a generation ago. So where are we heading on this? And this is something really all of us as Muslims we need to be concerned about, because it affects all of us. Because ultimately, the evils of society are not just confined to the individuals, but affect the whole society as such. And I mentioned also in that 2 weeks ago that those evils the consequences of those evils will affect all of us. The harms will come back to all of us. So as Muslims, we have responsibility really to speak and to address these concerns when they arise. And unless we do so, we are going to be held responsible by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As you know, one of the foundations or cornerstone of Islamic society is, the promotion of virtue and the prevention of vice or evil. So when we see these things going on, we have a duty as Muslim to really prevent it. We can't really turn away from it. It's not a matter of mind your own business, it is our business. Especially when it affects the Muslims. If people are claiming to be Muslims, then we must speak out on this. And so that's why the importance of this topic, brothers, because people are doing it because the halal solution has been made very, very difficult. You see, if you look at Islam and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us laws and regulations, when Allah has prohibited something, then Allah has opened another door to it, another lawful door for us to do this. So when Allah prohibited, zina, fornication, adultery, Allah opened the door to marriage and made it so easy, so simple, that really all it takes is the agreement of the two people, witnesses, and that's it. As simple as that. The solution to the problems of the youth today, the first solution, or the first and the simplest solution, is early marriage. If you want to be with a woman wants to be with a man, the only way and the simplest way is get married. And you're probably thinking, well, easier said than done, right? Easy to say this, but not so easy to do it. But inshallah, I'll talk about some of the practical ways you can go about doing this. If you're serious about this, then really you have to be serious about taking the steps to do it. You can't just simply say, I want to get married and just, simply sit back and expect it to happen. It won't happen like that. You've got a lot of obstacles, and the biggest perhaps is probably your own families that you have to deal with. Right? Families are the first ones who will tell you, no, you're too young, you're not responsible, you haven't got income, and so on, so on, so on. They put a list of obstacles in your way. But